Want to learn a really cool technique for greater persuasion and greater influence? Stay tuned. This is Damon Cart from NLP Gym. Understand these two simple words for greater influence and greater persuasion. If you haven't already, please click subscribe to this YouTube channel so you can get these videos on a regular basis. When I explain neuro-linguistic programming to people, the hardest part I have getting across is the importance of language and how language affects our experience. The best way to really understand NLP is to experience it, and it takes a lot of experiencing NLP in order to really understand it. Now think about that sentence that I just said. And what was the connector word that connected the two main ideas? It was the word and. And how did you represent the sentence in sensory experience so that you even knew what I was talking about? Now the sentence again was, in order to understand NLP, you need to experience NLP. And it takes a lot of experiencing NLP to really understand it. Most people don't realize that they represent every single word in some sort of sensory representation, and then string those sensory representations together in one sentence to make one sort of generalized meaning through sensory experience. And what I mean by sensory experience is what you see, what you hear, and what you feel. A lot of people think that they're defining the meaning of each word as they see it, or when they see the word or they hear the word, that they're getting a definition of it and that's how they know the meaning. But if you think about that, our minds don't work that way at all. If it did, our minds would work in a very slow way, and we can respond immediately to a question or a demand. Take the sentence, come downstairs for dinner, or come downstairs to eat dinner. Now, if you had to go into the dictionary in your mind and define every single one of those words, and then put all those words together and define what that sentence meant, it would take you a long time, and your dinner would probably be cold, because if somebody says come downstairs for dinner, you can respond within moments or seconds. But if you had to go and define each word, you would think, okay, come, okay, it's a word that means to move, and then downstairs, okay, there's stairs, it's a thing that you walk on. It would take a long time, and we don't do that, obviously. We can move and respond much faster to a demand or a question than having to define every single word. When you heard me say that sentence, when you heard the word downstairs, did you see a staircase or the bottom of a staircase? Did you hear the sound of what it would sound like if somebody was walking down the stairs? Did you feel the stairs underneath your feet as you walked down them? Rewind the tape and think about that. How did you know what the word stairs meant? Because you didn't go into a definition of it. You didn't look it up in your mind and find a word, a sentence explaining what downstairs meant, or what dinner meant, or what come downstairs meant. The reason why most of us don't know that we do this is because it happens really fast. But you can slow this down, and you can really lock onto how it is you're representing each word in some sort of sensory experience or a combination. What happens when you encounter words like and but? How do you represent that in sensory experience? Take the sentence that I said earlier, and let's switch and put but in its place. So if I say, to understand NLP, you really have to experience it, but it takes a lot of experiencing NLP to really understand it. What happens now? How does that change the meaning for you? In my experience, when I say it that way, or when I hear it that way, or even when I read it that way, now it feels like there's an obstacle in the way. Now it feels like there's something I need to overcome, and that there's a challenge, and that understanding or even experiencing NLP is a challenge. Whereas before, when I used the word and, it felt like a very sort of smooth transition into, well, here's understanding NLP, and you do it through experience, and it takes a lot of experience. When you put but in there, it sounds like there's a challenge. It sounds like there's an obstacle. Your experience may be different though. How is it for you with the word but rather than and? The word but tends to negate whatever comes before it. Now, this doesn't mean that you should never use the word but. Sometimes you're going to want to do that. Sometimes you're going to want to negate or even challenge the person you're persuading. It depends on who you're persuading and if they like challenges or if they're going to feel the need to want to overcome the challenge. If you're in sales, you might say, this widget is top of the line, but it's also the most expensive one. For clients who like a challenge, or especially the ones who, when you take something away from them, they want it even more. For some clients, you might actually want to say something like, this widget is top of the line, but it's the most expensive, and you probably don't have that in your budget. To certain clients or prospects, that's going to sound like a challenge, and they're going to want it even more. To some, though, it won't, and it will feel like, whoa, you're probably right, I don't want that. So know who you're influencing, know who you're persuading, because some people will like a very smooth hand-holding across the threshold to the sale, and you would want to say something like, this widget is top of the line, and it's the most expensive one. What is the difference when I say it with the word and as opposed to the word but? To me, it sounds less challenging. To me, and this is my own experience, yours may be different, to me it sounds like adding that it's the most expensive is almost like adding it as a benefit. Like, this is the top of the line, it's the most expensive, you're getting the best. Whereas but sounds like this could be a problem. The really cool thing about using the word and with the sentence about the widget is cost might have come up as an objection for the client, and it might not have been fully formed yet. And the best time to address objections is before they've been fully formed, before the client has actually voiced the objection. If you can get to it before that, it's going to be so much easier to overcome. So maybe price would have been an objection, but you're saying you're addressing it already. You're saying this widget is top of the line and it's the most expensive. And it could give the client the sense that you're already addressing that objective. And how you're addressing it is, well, it's the top of the line. Of course it's going to be the most expensive. You could also flip this sentence and you could use the word but and negate the expense. You could say, this widget is the most expensive, but it's top of the line. What happens in your experience when you hear the sentence like that? In my experience, it negates the fact that it's too expensive. And maybe it doesn't negate it so much as it justifies the expense. The reason it's so expensive is because it's top of the line. I used to do this with life insurance sales. I was selling the Cadillac policy. I would start there and work my way back to the least expensive policies so that by the time we got to the least expensive, it would seem so affordable. They would definitely at least do the least expensive. However, when I started having a problem sometimes whenever I would meet a client who was the one who kind of liked the challenge, and maybe that Cadillac policy was really out of their budget. They really couldn't afford it. It wasn't a good idea for them, at least not at that time. But because they liked that challenge and I sort of took it away from them, they wanted that policy and didn't even want the less expensive policy that still got them the same amount of coverage. It just didn't have all the bells and whistles. So you got to be careful. You got to know who you're persuading, know who you're influencing. Of course, you can use this for more than just sales. Anytime you're persuading or influencing anyone, just be aware of how the words but and can make such a huge difference in whatever it is you're explaining and whatever the direction is you want the person to go who you're persuading or influencing. So practice that. See how that is in your experience when you flip and or you switch out and but. And then for practice, before you maybe get into a situation where it's important that you persuade or influence someone, just practice on friends or practice on coworkers or whoever, and just see what it's like when you say the same sentence and pull out and switch out and or but. Maybe try and on 10 people and then try but on 10 people and just see what happens in their experience or use your calibration and sensory acuity skills to observe what happens in their physiology when you use these two different words. Give it a try and have a lot of fun doing it, and you'll see some magical things happen. Check out my website, nlp-gym.com. Follow me on Facebook for real-time updates on upcoming workshops and free practice sessions that I hold right here in Santa Cruz, California. If you like this video, please click like right down here and leave me a comment or a question. I will get back to you. Stay tuned to the end of this video so you can see how you can get your hands on a free NLP online training. Take care.